But next, as it says up there, we've got speakers from British Airways. So Tom Hostick and Claire O'Toole, they've been involved in ED&I activity at the Royal Aeronautical Society before there even was a Pride and Allies group. When I reached out to the society and said that I'd like to get something going, they were there right from the start because they'd always been there. Yeah, I'm very privileged to know both of them. So yeah, if you could please welcome. Is it Claire and Tom? I assume it is, both of you coming up to talk. So yeah.
We're double wraps. So.
Yeah. Absolutely. Over to you guys.
Right. Thanks, Luke, for that. That was a perfect introduction because I think your little anecdote there really touches on quite a lot of what we're going to talk about today in lots of different ways. So that was a perfect setup. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Hi, my name's Tom. My pronouns are he, him. Me and Claire always sort of start, we started doing this a couple of years ago with our gay job and our day job. So our gay job, or my gay job is co-chair of Flying Proud alongside Claire. So that's both our gay jobs. And my day job is I'm a cabin design engineer within British Airways Engineering. So I get to do all the fun stuff that, you know, all the nice new seats and make old planes look brand new by putting new stuff in it and things like that. So it's a great job for me. I love it.
And my name is Claire O'Toole. My pronouns are she, her. I co-chair Flying Proud with Tom, and I've been doing it for about 2.5 years now, I think. And it's been really fun. And then my day job is I am the Analytics and Insights Manager at BA CityFlyer. So CityFlyer is a subsidiary of BA, and we are, if anyone's flown from City Airport, you flew on BA CityFlyer. And I look after all the data across that airline. So whether it be commercial, engineering, safety, air ops, ground ops, I look over a portfolio over the entire airline. So it's really exciting. It's very, very variant. And today we're kind of going to talk about so this is kind of our, I don't know what the next slide is. So this is kind of our baby that we've been working on for the last year or so. So as you probably heard, Ryan gave a really good introduction of what ERGs are. We are volunteers at BA to kind of do the work that we do, and we're really passionate about it. And we've kind of created this entire, what you're going to see from scratch, pretty much. It's been like, we've been building it over the years. And I think we presented here 2 years ago, and that was right at the start of our allyship journey and building kind of these resources for the entire airline. And we've kind of just built on that. And we're going to make you talk to each other. So I'm putting it out there at the beginning. That's our content warning. We're going to ask you to interact with each other. And we're going to say right now, this is a safe space. We want to promote psychological safety in this room. So be yourself, start conversations. And that's the one warning I'm going to give. Everything else is very, very light.
So basically, this package that we've got, we've sort of cheated in a way. We've not really tailored it too much for today's event. This is what we have within our airline that we push out to our colleagues across all the different functions, engineering, flight crew, any job at BA, they've got access to this resource. So as we get into a bit later on, we're going to look at some case studies. So you'll actually get the chance to do some role play. You can pretend your cabin crew when you look at these case studies and things like that. So yeah, this is what we're going to do for the next hour or so, really. We're going to start with an introduction to allyship. Just out of interest, show of hands, how many guys know allyship in general? Yeah? Okay. So what we're going to do is go over the basics of allyship. I think, you know, a lot of us in this room are allies just for being here today, but we want to sort of delve into, you know, what does being an ally actually mean, and how can we translate that into our day-to-day lives. So that's kind of the first half. The second half is actually bringing that into action. So now we're confident allies and we know what we're doing. How can we translate that into an action and actually, you know, start using our allyship as a force for good. And then we're going to sort of practice what we've learned with some case studies, and then we'll sort of wrap it up, basically. So that's us. That's that bit. So, right, we'll get straight into it. So what is allyship? So allyship is using your voice and your privilege to take on the other struggles as your own. Now, what do we mean by privilege? I always want to get straight into this privilege bit, because sometimes it gets people's back up a bit when you call them privileged. Privilege is a great thing. I'm not going to try and make people be ashamed of having privilege. Privilege is fantastic. It gives us a platform that we can actually use to our strengths when we're talking about allyship. So privilege just means that, privilege doesn't mean you didn't work hard or struggle for what you have. It just means that there are some things in life you don't have to think about, or perhaps you won't experience just because of who you are. There's a lot of white men in the room, for example. We've got that gift in that sense, whereas women may have to, overcome certain barriers that we won't even think about. And actually, as a white man, I probably don't even know what those exact struggles are. And allyship is actually about understanding what those struggles are, and then being able to stand up for those people. So that's privilege, that's allyship. Okay, so the first step of allyship, the very first step, is understanding yourself. So, what is your privilege? You probably have more than one privilege, actually, so we can say, what are your privileges? And what are your biases? Now, we all have biases. They happen. They exist for a reason, okay? Things like stereotypes, they help us understand other people, work out how to interact with other people. Biases keep us safe. You could be walking down the street, you see a hooded figure come closer to you. Your bias there would be, that's dangerous. I'm going to cross over. I don't know. I can't quite see what this figure is. It could be Little Red Riding Hood, but you don't know that. That's one of your biases, okay? So if there's some biases that you don't recognize, or you don't think you've got any biases, you've almost certainly got some unconscious biases as well. So what we're going to do now very quickly is we're going to start that kind of learning with yourself, and I'm going to ask you, if you've got a smartphone, just to get out your notes page, and you're just going to have a very one-to-one with yourself, and have a think about, and actually write this down so it sort of sticks in your head. What are your privileges, okay? So just jot them down, just personal. You can keep it to yourself. If you don't have a smartphone, use a pen and paper. Do whatever. So have a think about what your privileges are in life. It doesn't have to be related to your sex, your ethnicity. It could be that both your parents went to university. It could be that you are a professional. It could be anything. It could be that you don't have to care for anyone. And then have a think about what your biases are. This is maybe a little bit trickier. You're going to have to be really honest with yourself about your own biases. So I'll give you a little chance just to jot that down. I'll have a swig of water. Which one's each?
That one's yours.
Thank you. Okay. And while you're thinking and finishing that off, I'll just talk about, that was your first step, understanding yourself. Your second step is understanding others. And that's actually the bigger piece in terms of your journey that you're going to go on as an ally. So what are other people's struggles? We just mentioned about privilege, not realising some of the struggles other people have to go through. What do other people have to go through? I'm not asking you to write that down on your phone. And then, how can you develop empathy? Now, sometimes I throw the question out, what's the difference between empathy and sympathy? I'm not going to do that, but the way I do it, and I give this terrible example because it makes me look like quite an evil person, but for me, so empathy is about being there and knowing what that feels like, really understanding when something bad happens to someone, really understanding how that feels. And sympathy is being like, I can see someone's upset, I'm upset that they're upset, but I don't fully understand why they're feeling the way they do. And the example I always give that makes me look a bit weird is that I never had a pet when I was growing up. I've never had a pet, ever, right? So I don't know what it feels like to have this random animal in your house that is all of a sudden part of your family. So when that animal gets ill or dies, I have sympathy for the person, but I'm sure I could look up what it feels like to have a pet, and I talk to all my friends about, how do you relate to your cat? How do you relate to your dog? And I know I've met your cat now, so that's and that's how maybe I could develop empathy for when people's pets are ill. But at the moment, really, all I have is sympathy. I can go, that's really sad. I'm sorry that some bad's happened to your family's pet. But that's my example of sympathy and empathy. Should we go next?
So we're going to do a little bit of an exercise to kind of go back and everyone has biases. So this is going to be this is the first interactive thing to finding a friend at your table. And what you're going to do is you're going to get your phone, and preferably someone you don't know that well. You're going to guess, on a Saturday night, would you say the other person would go out or stay in? What type of music do you think your partner listens to, just by looking at them, because you don't know that much about them? And where do you think this person gets their news from? So you can either think about the media, so is it the radio, is it TikTok, is it Facebook, or even you can go down to is it BBC News, is it The Guardian, is it the Daily Mail? So we're going to give you 5 minutes to basically pick your partner. So I think most of the you can do it as a 3. I'm just trying to look at quickly odd tables and stuff. But as a 3, basically, and this is when we go back to this is a safe space, okay? No one's going to be upset. I've done this exercise before, and I think someone thought I listened to classical music. And I tried to not take that offensively. That's fine. But basically, and then afterwards, you're just going to quickly discuss why it is. And I think once you're doing this, you'll realise that you probably do have some biases, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to guess these answers. So we're going to give you 5 minutes to just kind of with your partner or in your 3s, to kind of answer these 3 questions, and just put it in your notes, and then afterwards you guys can talk about it and see what you guessed for each other. So hopefully that was helpful, and hopefully no feelings were hurt whilst you were doing this, but hopefully you kind of had a bit of an understanding that, everyone has biases, and it's being able to understand that if you do think something, that it is a bias and it does kind of reside inside of you, and they're not always necessarily bad. So if we move on,
it's worth mentioning as well, actually. Hold on, I just realised. There we go. Right. It's worth mentioning as well that the thing about biases is they exist for a reason, and like I said, they are there to guide you through life in a way. The important thing about allyship is actually just recognising your biases. Because as soon as you know your biases, you can actually then put some mitigating factors in to account for them. So you can go, actually, I think that's my bias kicking in. Let me just objectively relook at this scenario and have a think about, is this actually relevant? So yeah, that's it. So basically, allyship, as a resource is out there. It's on the internet. It's on podcasts. It's everywhere. And when I first started building this sort of package of allyship, this is probably the only bit that I made up myself, okay? And it's the way I tend to look at allyship, okay? So the way I look at allyship is that you've got empathy and you've got understanding, okay? And the more of that you have, the better you can build your allyship. So I like to look at them as little learning blocks. And the reason I like it is because those learning blocks that children play with, they're all in different colours, they're all in different sizes. They're very much like people. They're little pieces of people that sort of bring it all together. And that's why I think of it as building blocks. And the more building blocks you have, the more you can build up this fortress against hate and discrimination. But you also need to be wary that if you leave your blocks unattended, they're probably going to fall down and you might need to rebuild them again. You've still got them. You've still built them, you've earned them, you've got that knowledge, but you might need to build that fortress back up again. And a lot of our resources at British Airways, we like to build what we call these learning block PDFs, which have links and our favourite films and our favourite music for a certain thing, like for instance, like trans films with trans dialogues in them, podcasts. We do it for bi, we do it for all the LGBT spectrum essentially. And then, when it comes down to some special events in the year as well, like World AIDS Day, we'll have a special HIV learning block PDF as well. And that's just what we call them. You just call them learning blocks because, by listening to that podcast, you're building up that little pocket of information that you perhaps didn't used to have. So we're getting into the bit of the presentation now, which is what I call the cliches bit, because it's just full of cliches. But cliches are good because they help you sort of contextualize. So allyship is a personal journey to betterment. And I've split these out into personal and into journey. So the personal side of things is there's no teacher setting the homework. You're choosing to do this. No one's telling you to be an ally. I mean, perhaps some people are. But if you're going to be an ally, it's got to be a decision that you've made yourself. It's something that you want to do to make yourself a better person. Now, when you are on this journey, remember, keep that personal bit, because there's some, you shouldn't be using other marginalised groups as your illustrated textbook, okay? It's great to ask questions, and a lot of people welcome questions. But if you are a member of a marginalised group, sometimes you just want to fit in, and you don't want to have people sort of interrupting your flow of life, being like, oh, you've got this certain characteristic. What do you think about this? How do you manage that? They just want to exist, okay? And there's a lot of questions that people might ask that actually, you can Google and get the answer very quick, or ask ChatGPT. So keep, for certain things, you can just keep it personal. You can learn on your own. You don't have to ask other people. And then journey. It's not a tick box exercise to pass training. We all do that mandatory training at work. If you're anything like me, occasionally you go and then try and pass the validation at the end. This isn't like that. This is your journey for yourself to do. You don't want to be skipping things, because why would you do that? You're never going to be able to practice great allyship if you're going to skip to the validation. And the other thing is that, it's a kind of never-ending journey. There's no end to this. I'm a gay man. Do I know everything about gay men? No. I can be an ally to gay people because I know a lot. But there's many different journeys, that we've all been on. So I can't be the most perfect ally. I can always keep learning about other people's experiences to recognise when things aren't right and stick my oar in when I want to. So like I say, you'll never be the best, but you'll always be better than where you picked it up last from. Okay? So get comfortable with the uncomfortable. So this set of stuff is maybe some of the trickier parts of allyship, in the sense that why maybe a lot of us hold ourselves back, and particularly what we were saying earlier about senior leaders not wanting to, worried they were going to say the wrong thing. This is that part of allyship. So mistakes can sometimes be good, and this is, like I say, the cliches bit. The only true mistakes are the ones we don't learn from. So when a mistake inevitably happens, listen, learn, apologise if required, and just carry on. You don't have to make certain things into a massive song and dance. You can just go, oh, sorry, I didn't quite realise that. I understand now. Thanks for pointing it out. Move on. Okay, great. That's the easiest thing you can do. Fear should never hold you back. A lot of the time, when we hear something that's not right, the reason we don't interject is because we actually don't know. We know it's not right, but we don't know what the right thing is to say, so we just don't say anything at all. And the only way you can fight that is if you actually learn what the right thing to say is. And these answers don't come to us, We have to go out there and look out for them, and that's why, as we get to the end of this presentation, we'll be talking about how you can infuse allyship into your day-to-day life, so that when you do hear the thing that's not right, you do know the right thing to say as well. And the truth can be hard to hear. Luke, this is I always say that, I've had this experience as well, in the sense that someone corrects you and it's cringe. Sometimes you might not agree with it when you hear something, and then it takes someone to explain it to you, to go, okay, I get it now. God, how ignorant was I? But yeah, as you learn about others, you're probably going to learn more about yourself. So remember when we said at the beginning of this that, the very first step of allyship is understanding yourself. Well, actually, that's the first step, but you're going to do that over and over and over and over again, because you're always going to, learn about, some of the things that you've done in the past. I know I always sort of tempt myself to give an example of, a time when I've been taught a lesson, and I'm always too shy to do it. So, well done, Luke, because I can never do it. Because I've got a load of examples where I've said and done the wrong thing and learned from it. So, when you do make a mistake, or when someone does point something out, don't let it paralyze you. Don't let it, shy yourself away from ever doing it again. It's fine, like we've all got to learn. We're all going to make mistakes. We've all had, most of us have learned to drive a car. Like we didn't just get into it and start, going round roundabouts. I was with a Canadian person yesterday who was picking me up from the train station, taking me to a hangar. Oh my God, he was not ready for roundabouts. It was terrifying. So yeah. Right, next bit.
So a little bit, we're talking about how you can fuse allyship into your day-to-day life, and this is probably a little bit preaching to the choir because you're all sat here, but it's really easy to do. It's not, you don't have to make it a chore. It's just we all read books, we all go to we see films, we watch TV series, and maybe instead of going to see that big blockbuster that's coming out, which is the 100th Marvel film, go see something else. Go see something that's got a bit more of that's got a black main character or a trans character in, or is telling a different story from a different point of view. Rather than listening to the UK top hits or whatever, try and find a different artist who kind of, and then the more you listen to people's stories, it becomes easier of, like Tom was mentioning, of empathizing with them because you learn more about them. And it kind of goes both ways. I know my Spotify, when 5 years ago, I don't know if anyone did these things, it was how male heavy is your Spotify playlists and stuff, and I did it, and mine was shocking. Mine was 95%, and I was like, oh my God, this is so bad. I'm a terrible feminist, what am I doing? And now I'm way on the other side. And you kind of just have to realize everything is in perspective, and you just have to put the effort in. And it's just small changes that come in. There's so many documentaries coming out, there's so much better content that's coming about everyone's stories, and it's just kind of making sure that you're picking up the right things. And just changing, it's listen to a different point of view, kind of learn about something new. And like I said, it's really easy to do. And I know Tom's kind of mentioned it already, but at BA, we've created little packs that basically send people to I think we've got 3 books, 3 TV shows, as well as top 10 lists and stuff. And they're not just what we've recommended as Flying Proud. We've kind of gone and looked and just seen what the top lists are and kind of giving people other choices, because my music taste is not Tom's music taste, and it's not probably, everyone's got different music taste in here. So it's just kind of finding that variation.
One thing I always mention as well is podcasts are fantastic, because when you get a documentary on Netflix, it's generally written to be entertaining, okay? So there's someone who's trying to get an entertaining side over to you, and it'll miss out probably about 70% of the facts because it'll only tell you the most interesting things. When you've got a podcast, I'd say 90% of the time, it's actually given by someone who is a member of that marginalised group, okay? So, and they're actually telling their story, they're inviting other people on to tell their story as well. They're very rarely trying to make it super entertaining. It's just entertaining because it's informative, because you're learning about other people. So podcasts, for me, are a fantastic way just to learn about other people. And again, you can stick that on when you're in the bath, you can do it when you're walking the dog, when you're washing the dishes. It's so easy. You don't have to be going out of your way in your life to sit down and do an hour of training. It's not that. You can, when you're on holiday, you can read a book. It's all about just dropping that into your day-to-day lives. So another exercise for you with your phone is to think about looking at this as inspiration. You don't have to follow this, but this weekend, what allyship action are you going to take? How are you going to somehow this weekend fuse some understanding and learning about others into your weekend? So have a quick think about that, jot it down into your notes page.
So this is kind of when we go into the next part of our presentation. So the first bit was kind of allyship 101, what is allyship, what can you do to kind of be a better ally and learn about different groups. This is when we become I think we've called them allyship superpowers, and it'll make sense as we go on. But we've also advertised as active allyship, and this is some of the feedback that we got, that lots of people, they want to be allies, but they don't know how, or they don't know what to do when they hear something that happens. I heard something wrong, and I didn't know how I could navigate that situation. And this is why we built what we're about to go through. I will also add that we built this kind of together on our, out of hours. we did work with Stonewall on this, so Stonewall came and they did help. So it's not completely out of our brains. Don't worry, like we did get help. So there is a little bit of science behind this, but we've kind of put it all together and made it into something which is a lot more easily accessible, because a lot of the people who work at BA are crew. So we want something that was quick and snappy and not something that was going to bore them, because if you give people massive things to read, they're never going to read it. You need something that's really easy to understand.
Yeah, and I think what you're about to see as well, sometimes it's phrased as the 5 Ds. We didn't like that, so we called it superpowers.
Yeah, and the 5 Ds kind of make sense, but again, a lot of our people are cabin crew. 5 Ds is just asking for trouble that we don't want. So as you can see, we've got 5 things on the board, and delegate, extract, direct, delete, and document. And we've named these superpowers because we think there's not always the same way to do something, and you can do something different every single time, and it's what works best for you. So when something's not right, or you hear something or you see something, the aim of this is to kind of give you like a toolbox of different things you can use, and these are our allyship superpowers. So we'll go into each of these in a bit more detail, and then we'll also give you a chance to role play. So that will be your second part of interaction in our workshop. So the first one is delay, and that's kind of when you hear something, you don't have to interact right then and there. It might not be the situation to do so. So it might not be safe sometimes. Sometimes there's an interaction that's not safe to do it right there to go in. And it's going to the person afterwards and just checking in and be like, do you need help? Are you okay? And if you need talk, I'm here. And it's an opportunity to offer support and ensure that everyone is okay. And that's the first superpower we have. Again, these type of things, emotions can be high. And sometimes emotions are really high, and it's usually not all the time, it's safer to make sure you do it at a late time when everyone's a bit more calm. The second one is distract. So distract allyship superpower, it's quite good because you're kind of interrupting the flow. So you're not quite kind of jumping in and calling someone out. You're basically changing the topic of conversation. So if you hear something that you don't agree with, or there's someone's going on a rant, or they're just going into a spiral, or I say they're digging, you want to kind of take the shovel away sometimes, ask them a question that kind of derails the conversation. So what's the weather? I mean, it's a very British way of doing it. What's the weather this weekend? Have you seen this TV show that's on BBC? We work in the travel industry, so the best thing we do is, what's your next holiday? What's your next travel destination? And just kind of changing the topic of conversation and getting people to disengage from the conflict.
Yeah, this one's particularly useful if you actually don't know what the right thing to say is, but you want to shut it down. So it's a really easy way to step in.
And you'll find that if, I've been in those situations, and sometimes it's a relief when someone comes in and just changes the flow of conversation, because it just takes the pressure off everyone, and it means the person who's in that uncomfortable position usually doesn't really have to do anything because you've stepped in. I think I've had them before when I've been in like a women in STEM and someone goes on a spiral or something, and having someone else, having usually another man come in and just kind of change the topic of conversation is the biggest relief ever, because it means I don't have to be that person to tell them off, and most of the time I am, but I don't have to be, and it really, really helps. So if you don't know what to do and you forget everything else, this is a really good one. The next one is document. So it's pretty obvious what that is. It's kind of making a note of it and documenting through any channel that you have. So you should check with the person that they are okay for you to document this and you're okay to send it onwards, because not everyone wants it documented, not everyone wants it sent to HR. You just make sure that's okay, and you don't do it publicly. You don't kind of like, I feel like I shouldn't have to say it, but if you don't say, I'm going to document that, are you okay for me to document that in front of everyone? You kind of take them over, you write any notes down, you kind of write the report, and then you say, look, I've written this, it wasn't okay, are you okay for me to send this onwards? And making notes of like what the time was, who was involved, and where it is and things like that. Again, this is a good one if you don't know what to do at the right time. It can be a good one to kind of keep things going, because if you are the victim in this situation, you're not always going to know exactly what's happening, because it's quite traumatic if you're in that situation, and sometimes it's really useful if an ally comes in and takes that burden off of you, because you're kind of in panic mode, because you're being verbally like attacked. So it can be really good for an ally to step in, and sometimes you can feel like that's not your place, and that's why you ask and you say, "Are you okay with me doing this?" And then the fourth one, not final, is delegate. So sometimes it might not be you who is in the best place to do it. And I think one of the things we do is like with crew, there's, I don't know if people know about crew, but there's kind of like, you have your cabin crew and then you have your lead. And sometimes kind of like you want to give it to someone else, you want to give it to your manager because you think they've got higher control, they can deal with it, they can get it like they can get it through the system quicker. As someone who is a manager as well, I know that I'm always ready, that if my team wants something like, I don't know how to do this, I'm always happy to step in. And they usually have reporting tools. You can go to a colleague or a friend, and it can also be good if you are, if you're the victim as well. You can delegate. Feel free to find someone who is an ally, or you know someone, or your manager, if you feel they're a safe person. You can delegate that as well. Don't feel like it always has to be you. It doesn't. We're all allies here, and I'm sure most people would be more than happy to take up that burden for you and kind of free up your headspace for other things. And also some people, you might just not have the authority and someone else does, and that's okay. You can delegate upwards. And then the final one is direct. And that is when you step in. That is when something happens and you don't think it's okay, and you go in calmly. Calmly being, I always feel like we should have that in bold. Calmly intervene into the situation and basically say, I don't think that's okay. I don't think it's the right thing to say. I don't think it's the right place for it. And then, again, read the room. Don't do it if emotions are really high or there's any sort of like aggressiveness or violence in it. But sometimes it can be if you're, and I think this is kind of like, when you're in the pub with your mates and someone says something, that's when you be like, all right, mate, that's not all right. And that's kind of when you go in and say, that's a really good way of being direct and intervening. And sometimes it's kind of there isn't someone who's the victim in that moment, but if you're having a chat and someone says something about a marginalised group, you can still be an ally in that situation and say, no, that's not okay to say that. I think, there's lots, I work with a lot of pilots, and there can sometimes be a lot of like boys chat in a pilot group, and sometimes you just kind of have to say it, or if I'm with my friends and we're all like girlies together, and even girls do it, even we say things which aren't the right things sometimes, and then you intervene and you say, look, that's not all right to say that. So it's not a gendered thing. Everyone can do it. Everyone can say the wrong thing. And sometimes it's just banter or a joke, and you can still step in. But again, this is something that you should only ever really do if you feel safe enough to do it. I always feel like it has to be. I'm probably banging on about it, but I don't want anyone getting in any fights because they said, we saw this thing on BA and they said we should go and direct and so I'm like, I'm not having that on my conscience, thank you very much.
Yeah. There's a reason we put this one last, because there are just loads of other resources you can use before you have to go in and actually do this. I mean, it's great if you feel confident enough to do it and you can de-escalate and you can do it in a successful way, but this isn't the only way. I think when people think of allyship and standing up for people, everyone just thinks of the direct approach. And there are lots of other ways you can support someone.
And also, if someone says it to you, don't get defensive. I think that goes up. I think that's happened before, and it kind of goes on to what Tom was saying earlier in the presentation. Sometimes, you have to learn something about yourself. So it's kind of like, Luke, you put yourself out there with a story. You're going to go back, but don't get defensive if someone is direct and says, look, that wasn't what you just said right there. It wasn't right. Take it and learn from it.
Right, so we've already mentioned a few of these as we've been explaining how to use the superpowers, but there are some important considerations that you should think about when you're going to use your superpowers. So one of them is particularly what we're going to talk about when we do the case studies, is using the right superpower for you and for the situation. So when we do the case studies in a moment, we'll be asking you guys to think of what's your superpower that you think is the one you want to use. But also, maybe in this situation, what's the right superpower? Now, of course, like everything, there might not always be an exact right one, but there might be a wrong one. so you can think of that as well. One that's really important, and one that I like to really impress upon, is assuming best intent. There are some people out there who just cannot wait to call someone out on something and create this narrative around this certain person, that this person has said this and they're a despicable human being. For the most part, in our day-to-day interactions, the vast majority of people always have the best intent. We don't go out of our way to make people feel bad. Sometimes we just do it by accident. It could be a circumstance that we're in. We might be under a lot of pressure in the workplace. We might be very stressed. We might not be thinking about our words particularly. Maybe perhaps if we've got alcohol in our system, we might just spit things out. But for the most part, people will always have the best intent. And your job as an ally is essentially to guide them onto the right path and go, ooh, you could have been kinder in the way you phrased that, or that was slightly wrong what you said there. I appreciate where you're coming from and I can see why you might have that view, but have you considered this other view? One thing I like to talk about is, something a lot of the time in the media when we have, people on news channels, particularly on breakfast TV, they'd like to put one person with one viewpoint at one side of the table and another person with a complete opposite viewpoint at the other end of the table, and then they go to war with each other. There's no one in the middle that goes, I can see that person's point, and I understand that in certain situations your point may be valid, and I can see this person as well, I can see your point, and I can go, actually, yeah, in some situations that might be valid. There's never that, and I think the way that perhaps, maybe I'm a bit on my soapbox now, but maybe is, the way that our culture is going is that we have to have these polarised opinions, and it's just not true. There's context, there's understanding, there's empathy that we can put into all of these, and, sometimes someone might come out with something, and maybe just because they haven't got all the facts, thought about all the context, it sounds like they're saying the wrong thing, and maybe they've just phrased it wrong. And that's where you can use your allyship to really, almost bring yourselves together as well, and rather than fighting against, a viewpoint, actually understanding each other. So assume best intent is super important. I love that one. Next one, think about what's best for the harmed individual. This is something Stonewall taught us as well, and it's a really valid point. Is that, when you are being an ally, and particularly if there is a victim involved, so if someone is being harassed or discriminated against, you've got to think about what do they want in that situation. And when I say think about, you can ask as well, much like what Claire was saying with, things like document and things like delegate. You can say, I've witnessed this, I'm an ally, what do you want from this? I've documented it, you can have the notes, you can do what you want with it, or if you want, I can sort this out for you. If you're, it's always about thinking about what's the situation for them. That, you don't want to be taking your ego on board and going, I'm going to sort this because I'm the hero, I've got these superpowers, so I have to be the hero. It's not true, You've got to think about what's actually the best thing for that person who's really feeling that discrimination. And finally, we've tried our best to enforce this as we go through it, be safe. Always seek to de-escalate a situation. Where kind of a bit like your example at the pub, sometimes we love to have a fight with our friends, and we might be escalating it there when we're, having a bit of a war of politics, for example. But in allyship, we're always de-escalating. We're not doing it for a bit of fun. We're not doing it to watch the sparks fly, to make ourselves feel good about ourselves for putting someone down, for saying something wrong. We are doing it to be better people and to influence other people to be better as well. So that's why de-escalation is so key. Again, sometimes it's better to wait until emotions have calmed. Like I said, in a pressured environment, when people are upset, they will say and do the wrong thing. I hate it when people say, oh, I've seen their true colours. It's not their true colours. it's something that's been spat out by your human sort of hormones and stress signals and everything, and it's just not true. It's not their true colours. So yeah, like I say, that's where you might want to consider your delay techniques. Wait until the dust has settled if you don't think your de-escalation is going to be successful. And then we've put this in just for our slides because obviously it's BA internal. In an emergency, always call 999 or contact the SSDM. That's our security manager on British Airways, so you don't need to worry about that in this room.
So we're just kind of going to wrap up, and then there'll be time for if people want to question us afterwards. So like we said, we're basically showing to you exactly what we've created for BA, or for colleagues at BA. And the next bit is kind of next steps, after we've, people have read through the slides, they've attended one of the training sessions. And this is just something that we have at BA. So we basically say things a good ally does. So we signpost to all of our reporting tools. Some of these are BA ones, some of these are inclusion diversity ones, and we also have our own Flying Proud one that we've created. And we also signpost to where people can find support. So, we have various things for crew care, we have partners with Unmind, we have well-being zones and stuff like that, just for everyone to kind of have a look. And a good part of being an ally as well, is we kind of want to highlight is signposting as well, because again, not everyone, and you can or should take the burden sometimes, and sometimes you need to go find support and send people to go find support. We also kind of point out to all of our other network groups. So obviously Flying Proud created this, but we have 5 major network groups, and we have a few faith groups as well, and we just signpost to where they are. So if people want to kind of network with us, so we have Flying Proud, we've got Wings, which is our Women's Inclusion Network Group for Success. We've got BME, which is Being of Minority Ethnic. We have Being Accessible, which is our accessibility network. And we also have MISBA, which is our faith group for people of the Islamic faith in BA. So we also signpost this because some of these networks maybe don't get the visibility they deserve. I think BA Flying Proud are quite an established group, so we want to make sure that we are signing. And also inclusive intersectionality as well. Just because you're part of one group doesn't mean you're not part of another group, and sometimes it's nice, I think, for me anyway, I'll go to Wings and stuff, and you have different problems when I'm with the Wings group versus when I'm with Flying Proud group. So, and then finally, we kind of made this as shareable as possible. So all of our slides actually have little notes for people to read, it's like a little script. So if people want to take it to their team, because everyone's got team meetings, everyone's kind of usually got an inclusion diversity slot at their team meetings, and this is a good chance for people to go take that to their own teams and spread the news. And kind of, we've got lots of notes, and the message is quite simple, it's not difficult to kind of be able to share and understand. So yeah, we just kind of want to make sure that it's not something that someone just takes home and just sits with. They have the capability to be able to share it elsewhere with their team. And I think that's everything from us. We are ready to if anyone wants to ask us any questions, either about the stuff we've gone through, about Flying Proud at BA, or anything about running a work group or anything like that. We're pretty open for any questions anyone has.
Hi, it's Luke again. So first up, can I steal your slides? Attributed, of course. Can I?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We didn't answer because we thought it was taken for granted that you could.
Yeah.
Thank you. No, it's great. I thought that was excellent, and thank you so much for your time on that, and for making us talk to each other and everything, which I think is really really powerful that you managed to do that. The energy you brought into the room is really, really cool. So thank you. And the question I was going to ask, I know you've been developing this, and I don't know how far it's been rolled out internally and everything, but have you had any sort of pushback, or what's the engagement been and the feedback from sort of managers and people that have been involved?
So we've had really great engagement feedback. So what we did is we took this out from being online and we created it into massive billboards, and this was all Tom's vision. Tom and I work in very different ways. Tom thinks big, And then I kind of be like, okay, love that idea. Let's put it into what can actually get approved by management. So what we did is so we've got multiple locations at BA, and we kind of printed out our superpowers in like huge screens, and we put them in the various offices, and we've got like little physical cubes and stuff so everyone could see it. And you've probably noticed it's bright yellow. You can't really miss it.
It's not an accident. We wanted it to stand out. We didn't want it to look like a corporate piece of messaging. So, you know, the slides you've seen today are not our typical
These are our BA colours.
Yeah. We really want it to feel like something different, sort of really like spike out and you know, not be part of the you know, we didn't want people to ignore it because it was part of sort of BA's culture kind of thing.
And so what that meant is we had QR codes and we had people scan it. And we had loads of people going up and like, oh, what is this? This is such a good idea. We kind of had like big A2 things that kind of showed all the various steps. And one of the things that we have as well is what we call it the gay plane, which is what homophobia looks like in 2024. Like, I think it's quite different to what it was 10 years ago. And sometimes it's a lot more passive aggressive. No one comes out, very rarely in the workplace does someone come out like calling you the F word or anything like that, or actively not, like, you know, like being very aggressive in what they say to you. And most people get sent to HR quite quickly from that, but it kind of notices a very difference. And also the nuance between what people say if it's non-binary, trans, bi, and also we have things like assuming people who have a disability don't have a sexuality. We have all of those little nuances, and that got lots of traction as well because lots of people actually learnt from that. And we've got it in a nice like aeroplane because we're an airline.
It's a seating layout, and every seat has a kind of different comment associated to it.
Yeah, we've had loads of people, and we've had loads of feedback, and I think we've been asked to present this quite a few times to senior leaders as well, because doesn't take very long, and I think people get quite a lot out of it. And everyone was screaming for like, what can I actually do? And we were like, this is what you can actually do. And so it's quite easy. And
we deliberately developed it, even though we're flying proud, the LGBTQ plus network, we deliberately developed it. You'll see there's very little LGBT content in that today. We can all apply it to that, and we've done that with some of the case studies, but it applies to everything. Allyship is everything. You can be an ally to someone who has to care for elderly parents. You can be an ally for, you know, someone who's got sick children. You know, it doesn't have to be the diversity and inclusion bubble that we all know. It can be strands of that. You know.
And that helped get it approved over the line and get it sent across all of BA. That bit of being like, if you're going to do this, you can't just do it for one group of people. You have to do it for everyone. And that's what's really kind of struck with people. So.
Thank you so much.
Oh, come on. You can ask anything.
We've bored them to tears, Tom.
So you spoke before about the delegate stuff and the diversity, especially around your cabin crew and things like that. And on the earlier topic, there was about the anecdote about somebody being assigned a job but not feeling safe to fly to certain regions. Obviously, if you sign up as cabin crew, there's a prerequisite that you're going to be travelling around the world and where you may be deployed. But and I suppose this is more for your HR department to enforce, but as an ERG, what sort of linking or advisory capacity have you had into kind of ensuring safeguarding? So where those people have to go there for work and they may come away from a certain job or shift feeling a certain way because of something that's happened, what safeguarding is in place, and have you guys had any influence upon that?
So one thing I can explicitly say is for certain destinations, trans colleagues are exempt from those destinations. So that's one thing that is just completely sorted out. Now, you know, we're well aware the stereotype of cabin crew is you know, quite gay men orientated. So there are obviously a lot of gay colleagues, and you know, we're a worldwide airline. We have to comply with a lot of international rules and customs. That is where it gets trickier, because obviously we can't just exempt everyone from travelling. You know, not everyone, but quite a majority of people from travelling to certain destinations. But there is support out there, and that's kind of how we manage it. And quite a lot of the time, when it comes down to that level, it's on a case-by-case basis. When we talk about sexuality, everyone has kind of different strands to it, and how that's possessed. I wouldn't say I'm particularly effeminate, but I can be. Whereas there will be some people who, might be wearing makeup, have their nails done, things like that, where actually they might feel very unsafe when they travel to those destinations. So it's more managed on a case-to-case basis in that sense, but it's definitely something on our roadmap as an ERG to make sure that, okay, one, obviously it'd be great to exempt for certain destinations, but if we can't do that, how can we make sure there's a package of support around them? And that's definitely on our roadmap at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think what we do as the network group, we don't have the power to change policy, but what we can do is make sure we support those individuals, and we basically signpost exactly who they need to talk to. Like, if this is something that you're concerned about, BA is a massive company, and sometimes it's impossible to find exactly who it is, but we give them the contacts to be like, this is who you email, and we're there to support them through that journey to make sure that, because it's kind of what we can do in that situation. We can just support and help them. So that's pretty much what our role is in that, and then making sure that when we talk about when conversations about policy are happening, that flying proud are a consideration. And I think in the last year or so, we've become a lot more of a consideration in a lot of things that are happening at BA because we're really annoying. But it works. It's worked in our favour. So we get brought into a lot more conversations now.
I'll ask my question. The training was brilliant. I absolutely loved it. And part of it is because of your energy and your passion about the topic. If you're trying to give this out to the whole of the BA teams, have you got a method question, because we have the same challenge, of keeping the energy and the intent of the training and not it kind of, I think you mentioned, when we do safety, we all just click, 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 that you haven't got a line manager somewhere just going, yeah, here's 5 slides, unconscious bias, let's move on?
Yeah. I think the messaging from this, it's kind of unique really, because other training like health and safety, you'd give a health and safety presentation and that's it. This is a presentation, it's kind of cyclic, it's a presentation about being an ally. So by giving the presentation, you are doing that. So you're inspiring other people to do that. So that's the kind of way that we've ran with it, is the sense that like we say on that slide we had before, a good ally gives this presentation. There's nothing stopping you being able to do that, and that's kind of the way that we've phrased it. It's not a difficult message. It's actually quite simple to come across. It's just one of those things where you just almost have to interrupt someone's day-to-day life to sort of have them see it. We're not teaching, how to do a certain thing. We're just teaching obvious things that we all do, but recognising that we do it. So I think that's the kind of that's our method really with this, isn't it?
And I think as well, you'll be surprised by how many people are as passionate about this as we are. Like, we're not the minority in this. I think anyone who wants to be an advocate will be passionate. It'll be something that they really care about. And something that we do have within Flying Proud, and it's just about to be launched, is we have Flying Proud champions. And this is what people who don't have the capacity to be on a committee, they can't give all that time, but they want to be there and they want to be able to support where they can. And this would be the perfect thing for our champions to do. Be like, this is your chance. We've got I think we've got 100 champions signed up or something, and then we would really push them, because these are people who've signed up to be like, I want to do more. And they would be the people that would really kind of push this and flush it through. So yeah, that's kind of it's a combination of things. We do rely on other people being passionate, but I think that passion exists. I think it's out there.
Yeah, and the other thing I mentioned as well, and I kind of forgot to mention it today, is that we're obviously talking about in a workplace environment. Nothing we've discussed here today can't be taken outside to your day-to-day lives. When you've got a new neighbour, when you've got a sunbed on holiday next to someone else, it's just about being a better person, a bit more respectful person. A lot of the time the word woke gets thrown at people. Woke in its sense is just caring about other people and having a bit more empathy and a bit of respect. So if anyone calls you woke, that's a compliment. Take it.
And I will add as well, BA, every single person has an inclusion diversity corporate goal. So everyone has that as their goals, and you have to get your goals if you want to, at the end of the year, to kind of get any sort of. So it's a really really easy way for people to be like, okay, like I've done this goal, I've like, you know, and it kind of pushes people to be like, one of my goals, every senior leader management has an inclusion diversity goal in their objectives. So it kind of constantly pushes them to like want to be involved. And I think that's really helped since that's been put into place.
We talked a bit about one of the examples, which was the captain example, training from the top. What do you do differently, or do you do anything differently with senior executives from the end? Because obviously this is very important, that the training from the top follows through with the whole organisation. So do you need to do anything different with them? Is the follow-up any different to make sure that you get the message across?
I think it can be tricky, and this is where we really rely on our sponsor. So our sponsor is on the management committee, and what we try and do, and we work with our inclusion diversity team as well. So I think they are currently running all of our leadership team through inclusion diversity training themselves. And I think it's been mentioned, people want to help, people want to know what the right thing is. A lot of them just don't really know this exists, and they don't know we exist, and they don't know what we do. And I think they think of us and they think, oh, Flying Proud, they just organise Pride every year. And we do that, but we do like 101 things on top of that. So I think as we get more visibility, we do get more senior leaders come to us, and we kind of just treat them the same, because at the end of the day, we're all people. We're all people who want to be better and do better. And what we really do is we put more of an emphasis on like, you're leaders, you can change things. If people see you doing the right thing, they'll do the right thing. Like, it's this whole, you know, you can't be what you can't see. So if you see other people being like, oh no, they're taking their time out of their work day to like learn about this, that makes it okay for me to do it. And I think that's the only thing I think we'd really want to emphasize to senior leaders, because the learnings are the same. We just tell them that people are looking at you, and you are role models, so do better, and be vocal about doing better.
It's interesting for me because I work in engineering, and it's a completely different environment to in the sky. In engineering, you have to have this environment. It's kind of the same for people flying, but there's a bit more of a chain of command. But you have to have this environment where you feel comfortable challenging. And there's a lot of engineers in this room now where if something's not right, it's your duty to bring that up. And a lot of the time, you know, I always say, like, I'm not challenging you because I think you're wrong. I'm challenging you because I don't understand why that decision's been made. So for me, that's the way I work in engineering. And it's a culture where no one, when someone gets called out on something, it's not because they're having a go at them. It's because we're trying to work together for a better solution, a safer solution that's going to, you know, get people to their destination safely. And that's really important. I think in the sky, you do have that more challenging kind of chain of command where you're right. If the captain's behaving in a certain way, there is potentially, and it's more historical the way it's followed through, that is a greater challenge. But hopefully with this learning, it gives people the confidence to even challenge the captain in that scenario, because, like you say, it's not a matter of, we're not saying, oh, do you think we should land a bit earlier or something like that. It's something a bit, it's not technical about the flight, it's about the safety of everyone on board. So.
I think that's everything.
Cool.
Well, thank you so much for listening to us.
Yeah.
And we'll be here, so if you want to come talk to us one-on-one, feel free to do so. And I'm pretty sure like our emails are probably going to be shared and stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for all getting engaged as well.
Yeah.
You know.